I'm Ted Clarke, and I'm the general manager of Grand River Raceway. This is our regular Friday night fun and frivolity show, I guess you would say. But there's 11 races of standardbred horses that will take place over the next 2.5 or 3 hours. And by and large, most of them tonight, I think, are trotting, but some of them will be pacing. And the difference, those are the two different gates at which standardbreds actually compete. The pacers can generally go a little faster than the trotters. The trotters generally make more breaks and make the race a little more exciting, but nonetheless, they'll compete. There are 9 horses in each race. They start behind a starting gate that is mobile and rush away from the gate to go round and round the track. This is a half-mile track, and so it requires 2 complete revolutions of the track to make a complete mile. And all of the races are competed for 1 mile. They're not staggered distances as you would see in the thoroughbreds.
What is the difference between a trotter and a pacer?
The trotter is a diagonal gait. It's the more normal and natural gait of a carriage horse. So the right fore and the left hind will go forward at the same time, whereas a pacer is probably a smoother gait, but he moves both of his left legs forward at the same time, and both of his right legs will go forward at the alternate time. When the left ones are going back, the right ones are going forward.
And with standardbred racing, what makes it different than thoroughbred and quarter horse racing?
Oh, it's much better. The difference is largely in the background of racing. Standardbred racing grew up as a cultural movement amongst the rural population of several northeastern United States and the eastern coast of Canada, and Ontario and Quebec mixed in. It probably reached its pinnacle as far as crowd appeal in the late 70s, early 80s, but has maintained a pretty decent run at things ever since then. Thoroughbred horses obviously go altered distances. Quarter horses just go one distance. Quarter horse race is over in a few seconds. Standardbred race generally lasts 1.5 to 2 minutes. Actually, 1.5 would be pretty quick, but I think the fastest times are about 1:46, where the thoroughbreds don't spend so much time thinking about the time of the race. They think about winning the race. There's a lot more strategy as far as how the horse is prepared. Thoroughbred horses race every 3 or 4 weeks. Standardbred horses race once a week. There's quite a different approach to the two sports. And I guess the other very great difference is that standardbreds start generally up to 10 in a race. Thoroughbreds will start 15 or 16 or whatever they can get in that class. So the Kentucky Derby often goes with 20. So there are a lot more horses competing.
And on the most basic level, the thing about standardbred racing that makes it different as far as how the jockey or driver drives and rides the horse is what?
The cart. As opposed to a thoroughbred jockey, obviously the driver in a standardbred race is sitting behind the horse on a cart. He has the added disadvantage of having the cart to weave through the horses and to make movement from last to first or whatever. He has to figure out a way of getting a much bulkier package around the corners and through the field of horses. The driver generally isn't necessarily a real small guy. Some of them are, but there are lots of drivers who are in the 175 or 80 pound range. So there's a pretty significant difference there.
So that would make standardbred racing a bit more inclusive for people who can get involved on that level.
Well, it's inclusive from that point of view that weight isn't necessarily the only restriction, but it's inclusive because virtually anybody who has land and a horse and a cart can hook their horse to the cart and begin to race. It was started, I think, racing on roads when people were going to and from town or to and from church. And in fact, I think today if you went over in the Elmira area on a Sunday evening, you might find some young lads with buggies heading up and down the road actually racing, whether they're not obviously wagering events, but nonetheless, that's been the sport of rural Ontario and several other municipalities for a long time. Well, there's actually a pretty close relationship between the Amish and the Old Order Mennonite community and the horse and the standardbred horse. The standardbred horse was built to be a cart horse, or a carriage horse, whatever you want to call it, and so it provides them with their most abundant source of animals to drive on the road. Many of the horses on the road are horses that have raced and or were raised to race but didn't have enough speed to race or whatever. So we're closely tied from the point of view of being a supply chain into that community's transportation plans.
Now, for Grand River, specifically on tonight's Friday tarmac, what kind of events do you host?
Well, tonight there's a somewhat special program in that if you want to drive a horse on the racetrack, this is your night. So you can go down and register at the booth there, and every race there will be a horse and driver coming by with a two-seated jog cart that will take you for a ride around the track in the setting of a race, not in the race, but in the setting where the race takes place. And it gives you quite a different perspective when you get out there and see how fast horses are going by you and so on. It's a real, I think, a real experience for people who aren't familiar. The other things that are going on Friday nights, we make a practice of trying to entertain the kids who are here. And so there will be a tour to the backstretch for the children to go back with their parents, of course, and with 2 or 3 or 4 chaperones to the edge of the paddock building where they can see the horses up close and maybe even get to pet one's nose. So those 2 events are probably the highlights of the night. We have a regular bouncy pony stakes each Friday night. You get to ride on a bouncy horse if you happen to be the fan who wants to do it. They go out on the track after race 10 and bounce along for 100 feet or so and see who can win in that particular event. If your stamina is good, it might work for you. As far as the local community is concerned, this operation is owned by an agricultural society, so it's really a community-based organization that contributes back into the local economy with whatever it can raise. On Monday night this week, there will be 3 kids getting scholarships going to university, for instance, as a result of what the Ag Society has been able to earn by conducting these kinds of events.